Good morning, everybody. This is Sarah again from Bird Conservancy of the Rockies, back with another Facebook Live for Bar Lake State Park. So we again want to thank Ranger Michelle and everyone at Bar Lake for letting us co-host these. They're so much fun to do. And first of all, I want to say we miss so much getting to answer bird and nature related questions. So please, if you have any questions at all, please drop them in the comments and we will get back to you as soon as we can. So today, continuing our water theme, we are going fishing with Osprey. So Osprey is another kind of iconic bird of Bar Lake State Park. There is a pair that nests there every year. So the next time you're out at Bar Lake, be sure to look for, there's a big post platform out in the lake where they nest, and they have returned for the year. So be sure to be on the lookout for those the next time you're at Bar Lake. So I'm gonna turn us around here so we can see. Here is the Osprey. So you can see they're in the raptor family with that really intense sharp hooked beak and those talons. Check those out. Man, those are gnarly looking. So just a little bit about identification. They are this dark brown above and pretty white underneath, and they have this really distinctive brown eye stripe that goes through their eye and behind. And a lot of times they look like they're kind of having a bedhead day, that crest on top. And then from underneath, they have really interesting patterns. So they're pretty heavily barred on their wings and their tail. And then another really kind of defining characteristic, if you're looking at one from underneath as it's flying, are these really dark kind of wrists, where their kind of wrists would be. And another thing to look for when they're flying is kind of different from other hawks and raptors. They will have their wings kind of swept back, so they almost look like an M shape from above. Then they have that really cool yellow eye as well. So they're really cool birds, really distinctive. And let's see, so here is a range map of where we can find osprey. So again, that yellow is migration. And so we can see here in Colorado, they do breed throughout parts of the state. And as I mentioned at the beginning, Bar Lake is definitely one of those sites. Hi again. So let's talk a little bit about what they eat. As you saw in that last picture, that osprey was holding a nice fish. So they are primarily fish eaters, and they use those talons. They will dive down into water feet first and just plunge into the water, grasp onto a fish, and pull it out and fly back to their nest or perch or wherever they are going to chow down on that fish. And something that's really cool about osprey and their talons is that, like most birds, their talons are, they have kind of 3 in the front and 1 in the back, but they can actually rotate one of their toes, and so they're better able to hold the fish. And then they'll hold the fish so it is in line with their body. So as they're flying away, to wherever they're going, it makes them more aerodynamic as they're holding that fish. All right, so another thing that is really interesting are live cams. And we don't have one at Bar Lake, but Boulder County Open Space does. So I'm gonna pull up that live cam and we can take a peek and see if those osprey are on their nest now and what they're up to. So give me 1 second. Okay, here is our live cam. Let's see what they're up to. Go full screen. Oh, cool. Look, there's an osprey on their nest. And it looks like they haven't laid eggs yet. So I was looking on their website and they just returned maybe about a week ago. So they're still kind of surveying the area, spiffing up their nest, and getting ready to lay their eggs. And so osprey, they build these huge stick nests and they'll build them on top of trees or telephone poles or artificial platforms. So I believe this one is an artificial platform, and the one at Bar Lake is too. So just like bald eagles, excuse me, were affected by DDT back in the 50s and 60s, osprey were as well. So again, they're fish-eating birds. That chemical got into their bodies through the fish they were eating. And then the eggs that they were laying, the shell was really, really thin. So as they sat on their eggs to incubate them, the shells would crack. So as part of conservation efforts, people put up quite a few artificial nest platforms that have been really successful. Oh, look at that. So neat. I noticed there's some plastic in their nest, so that's another really good reminder for us to be really mindful of our trash and our recycling, and when we're out hiking and walking around, to be sure we put our trash in the trash can. Sometimes birds will use it. And could have a chick get tangled up, or one of the adults could get tangled up, so that's a good reminder. Osprey they can lay up to 4 eggs. Usually there's 3. And they're a really cool speckled color. So after we're done with the live here, I'll post a couple of links, and one will be so you can go see the live cam. And on that same link, there are other recordings as well. So you can see the chicks hatching or the parents feeding them from previous years. That's really, really neat. And it looks like too, Boulder County Open Space might be looking for some community scientists. So it looks like there's an opportunity for you to be watching this nest via the live cam and contributing some data. So that's really, really cool. All right. Looks like there's some ducks in the lake too. All right, we'll pause this. And like I said, I'll post the link so you all can go back to it later to check on them and see what they're doing later today. All right. So Bird Conservancy, a few years ago, back in 2013, we were part of an effort to try to track osprey to see where they were going. So they are migratory birds, as we saw in our range map. And we know quite a bit about migration, but a lot of it is still a mystery. There's a lot of birds we don't know. We might know kind of where they go, but we don't know exact locations. Timing is another thing that's important to know. We might not know all the details that we want. So what happened was Bird Conservancy partnered with the U.S. Forest Service as well as Rocky Mountain National Park, and they banded and put satellite trackers on 2 osprey up at Lake Granby, and they gave them the names Rainbow and Shadow. And so what that allowed us to do, those satellite trackers allowed us to keep track of exactly where those birds were at any given time. So they would ping back location information so we could see every day where these birds were. And from that, we learned exactly where Shadow and Rainbow went in Mexico during their wintering season, and also what time. So those things are really important for us to know. When we know the more specifics of where birds are going, where their preferred wintering and breeding grounds are, what time they're migrating, that kind of information can help us to make some really impactful conservation decisions. So that's something that Bird Conservancy has been really excited to be a part of. And it has been kind of a mystery too, because those satellite trackers, sometimes they can fall off. And if that happens, they just kind of go silent. And so that did happen to both Shadow and Rainbow, but then a few years later, we were continuing the project, catching these osprey and tracking them, and they actually found Shadow again. So that was something they learned, is that osprey have pretty high what's called nest fidelity or site fidelity. So they'll come back to the same site every year and even use the same nest. So they were able to find the female Shadow again and put another satellite tracker on her, so we can still keep track of where she's going and when she's going. So I'm curious to know if any of you have ever seen an osprey and where you were, because these are pretty widespread birds. So go ahead and put a comment below if you have ever seen an osprey, and if you can remember where you were, let us know that too. Because something else that's really cool is osprey can actually be found on every continent except Antarctica. So it can be found on every continent except Antarctica. So maybe you were traveling overseas and you saw an osprey. Maybe you were at Bar Lake. We want to know. Okay, so as I mentioned, you can help us keep track of osprey by going onto that Boulder County open space site that I'll link a little bit later. And just keep track of those osprey. Notice their behaviors. What are they doing? When did they lay their first egg? How many eggs are there? When did the first chick hatch? Those are some really, really interesting things to keep track of. Okay, so one of the last things I want to show you, or I guess let you hear, is the noise they make. So some of you might be familiar with bald eagles. They don't make the noise that we oftentimes hear on TV. And in fact, for such a majestic, kind of tough bird, they make a really, really kind of silly clicking or clucking noise. So osprey are kind of similar. So let me pull up their sounds and we'll see. Okay, here we go. So here's one. Kind of a chirping noise. Let's see a different one here. They just kind of sound like a squeaky toy. I mean, for this really tough bird that is supposed to be such a fierce predator, I just find it so funny that bald eagles and osprey they sound like a tiny bird. It's amazing. Ooh, we saw, okay, so someone saw an osprey on Puget Sound in Seattle. Very cool. All right. So, thank you all again so much for tuning into our Facebook Live. I do want to say another link I'll post is we found a really cool activity book that was put out by the Indiana Department of Natural Resources. So if you are just jonesing to learn even more about osprey, there's a really cool activity booklet that they have. And from that I learned that the osprey is still considered endangered in the state of Indiana. So as a country in the United States, it is not on the endangered species list anymore. I believe it's a species of special concern. But in some states, that's interesting to know, they are still considered endangered. Oh, someone else is saying, we have several osprey nests in Larimer County and they're absolutely amazing raptors to observe and photograph. Absolutely. All right. And once again, let us know any questions that you have. We are just dying for some interaction. We are missing all of our students that we would have on field trips and such. So any bird or nature related questions, just let us know. Drop them on the Bar Lake Facebook page or head on over to Bird Conservancy Facebook page as well. And we will see you back here again tomorrow at 10 a.m. to learn more about something that you can find in the water at Bar Lake. Be safe, everyone. We'll see you later.